To see these guys in victory lane with tears coming out of their eyes, I was totally caught off guard, and it really reshaped my thinking about what an owner and what ownership was going to be like. It was like, it's not about me and the pride of what I can do, it's what we all can do. And it's what it means to all of us, not just the naysayers and what they're saying about me. To see these guys, that meant way more than anything anybody could have ever said going into that event. So to see those guys win their first race, that was a game changer for me as an owner, and really what ownership meant to me. Catch me on the first run. It took about 10 runs of testing with her before I realized this is literally the dumbest thing I've ever done in motorsports, is get in a top dragster with no experience. So anybody that thinks they could just jump in a top fuel car, you have a death wish is what you have, without at least training for it. But we've made changes in our careers before, and you have to sit there and be smart about it. You have to think about it from the business side and take the emotion out of the equation. Then you have to factor in the emotional side, and sometimes they align, sometimes they don't. But at the end of the day, our world's constantly evolving. It's stupid to think that we as people and professionals in business don't evolve with it. And with that come changes that people don't understand. Hi, this is Tony Stewart, and you're watching Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
A diverse racer, one of the most diverse racers in history, a legend on the track, most importantly, a father-to-be. Tony Stewart, your first child. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're about 3 weeks out now, right?
Yeah, we're in the closing laps here, so to speak. It's I'm really proud of my wife. We are, like I said, we're 3 weeks from having our first child, and thank God my wife is very detail oriented. She is the responsible adult in the family, and I am the forever 14-year-old child that she has to deal with. But she has done an amazing job. We have a house where I'm at in Lake Havasu, and we also have a ranch in Indiana. And literally through the summer, she's moved us into a new house, got both baby rooms totally done all by herself while I was out racing. So she's a badass. She's been getting stuff done, and I've been out trying to get stuff done on the racetrack in the meantime and staying out of her way.
You ready for this?
A little too late, isn't it, to say no? So no, I think I am. I mean, I think you talk to first-time parents, and you never know when you're ready, honestly. And I think it's true with society as a whole and all kinds of different topics you're always nervous about what you don't know about. And I definitely don't know anything about a child. I can go get in just about any race car in the world, and I can have the basics of it probably pretty quick, and at least have some idea what I'm doing the first time I buckle in it. You learn the rest as you go. This is no different, other than I know nothing getting into this. I don't even know how to climb in the car, don't know how to put seatbelts on when it comes to having a kid. So this is going to be a new experience, but it's the same for Leah too. The scary part with me is when I think I know nothing, Leah will say something and I'm like, "You're kidding, right?" And she's like, "No, I'm serious." I'm like, "We're in big trouble. If you're the responsible one and that was the question that came out of your mouth, we're in big trouble, and this kid's in dire trouble." So we've got help, though. We have a lady that's going to be spending 4 months with us to make sure that we don't screw this up. I told Leah, I said, this isn't like you go to a toy store and you get a toy, you bring it home, you have it for 2 days, you break it, you take it back, it's under warranty, you get a new one and bring it home and try again. So we made sure we call this lady the insurance policy to make sure that we don't screw this up for this child. So we want everything to go right.
I heard you say I have zero setup sheets. I have zero knowledge about any of this. And my wife laughs at me because I have a daddy app. What does a daddy app tell you to do? It gives
There's
you like
a lot.
Something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of apps out there. I had no idea, because I'm like, surely to God, after all these years of people having kids, every one of them cannot be a unicorn. There has to be something that's repetitive out of all this. But I mentioned to a lot of my buddies, I'm like, I have no setup sheets for this. And my racing friends are like, even if you did, you wouldn't be able to use them, because no two kids do the same thing. So, but I did find a couple apps online that I'm on one that literally sends me an update every day. It gives me something new to think about, and it's normally in the time frame of how things are progressing during the wife's pregnancy. So it's been very educational. It's been fun to sit there and my wife will say something. I'm like, oh, you mean this? And yeah, you're supposed to have this ready by the end of this week. And she looks at you like, how did you know that? Because she knows I'm not going to pick up a book on purpose unless it's to smack something with it. So, but it's been trying to utilize your resources to figure out how we're supposed to figure out this baby stuff.
So you're not going to bed at night reading What to Expect when you're expecting. I mean, I remember that book.
I've seen that book. I have not read that book, but Leah's mother got me a book to read as well, and you read a chapter a week. It just updates you once a week on what's going on that particular week. So
Okay.
it's done a little bit of reading and trying to do a little bit of homework. But everyone goes, you can read all you want. They said it just blows my mind. And you know, we've talked to race fans, you know, our peers. All these people say the same thing. They're like, you know, when this child comes, your instincts will kick in. I'm like, I don't even know. My instincts, the only thing my instincts tell me to do is go to the bathroom and when I'm hungry. Other than that, it doesn't tell me anything. So we'll see.
When the green flag drops at the Stewart household, we'll see what happens.
It's probably going to look like Talladega or Daytona. It will most likely for the first couple weeks be the big
It'll,
one.
it'll be interesting. Yeah. Well, congrats again to you and Leah with baby number one on the way. Um, Funny, you know, we talked to Robert Wickens yesterday, you know, the race car driver, Robert Wickens. What a wonderful guy he is, and inspiring story. And he talked about how race car drivers are selfish, how they primarily have to be in order to succeed. And he says that in all the best ways possible. And does it change? Does having a child change perhaps your approach on strapping in next time? Because you gotta kind of think of that other person that's out there now.
I haven't thought of that honestly, but I will say just off the top of my head, no. And the reason for that is just look at statistics. I mean, be realistic, and everybody needs to be realistic when they think about this topic and think, oh, what you're doing is so dangerous. Driving less than a mile to the grocery store to get milk and coming home is more dangerous than strapping in a race car,
Yeah.
just because of statistics. So I honestly, no. I mean, I don't feel like you have to stop doing your life. I mean, you and I were talking before we started the show, and my wife wanted to go out this afternoon and get on bicycles and go ride bikes. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. And mainly because is that a passion of ours? Is that what we eat, sleep, breathe, and think about is riding a bicycle the next day? No. Now, driving race cars, yes, that's what we both do. We both think about it all the time. That's our passion. Um, but it's risk versus reward. And you know, if I didn't feel like the cars weren't relatively safe, and you know, we were doing the best we could for safety within the team and within ourselves and the equipment that we wear, then I might think different about that. But you know, you can try to wrap yourself in bubble wrap and try to keep, you know, wear a mask 24/7 and try to not ever get sick. Things are just going to happen.
Yeah.
So you have to live life, and that's the way I think we want our family to be, and we want our children to be that way.
Tony, you don't look like you've aged a minute since you first strapped in, and it was IndyCar and it was NASCAR and it was all kinds of cars since then. But nonetheless, one chapter is closing, and you're coming to the end of a run. I know you've said that you think you're going to be maybe a little more emotional than you thought, maybe than you'd like to be. But how will it all be for you when the season ends?
I mean, it's definitely going to be a sad day. And there's no way. I mean, the only thing that's going to keep me from being at Phoenix on Sunday is if my wife goes into labor and we have this child. That would literally be the only thing that stopped me from going to the race.
Yeah.
16 years of my life, and the work that's went into it, the sweat that's went into it, the struggles, the things that you never would have thought about being a team owner that you had to deal with, you know, dealing with a pandemic. How do we take care of our employees during a pandemic? Take care of them, take care of their families. But most of all, the relationships in 16 years that I've built with these people, and you know, to know, I mean, I literally went to the shop. I went to the Talladega race just I had raced the weekend, literally the day before that whole weekend in St. Louis with the top alcohol dragster, and was like, I'm getting on the plane tomorrow. I'm going to Talladega. I'm going to go to Charlotte. And literally after we left Talladega, went to Charlotte. I spent the whole next day at SHR. It was my last day at SHR at the building. And, I stayed probably an hour after employees were gone and just walked around and looked around and remembered back to what it was like the first day I walked in that building. And then thinking about 16 years later and looking at it and looking what we built and what we were able, and looking at the banners hanging from the ceiling, which were pole position qualifying and race wins and the 2 championship banners, and thinking about what all we did as an organization to take a group that were 34th and 36th in the points with the 2 cars they had, and coming in there and turning that building around and employing more people, going from a 2-car team eventually to a 4-car team, and winning 2 championships and 70 races. And thinking about, I mean, you can look at the list of teams that have been in the Cup Series less than 16 years. They accomplished a lot less in their time. And there's teams that have been in the sport long after 16 years that haven't accomplished what we've accomplished in the sport. So I'm really proud of what we've done. But yeah, Phoenix, it was hard to leave the shop. It's going to be hard to be there at Phoenix and know that, honestly, when I left the shop, I sat there and thought, there's some of these guys that are friends of mine that I may never physically see again. But
Yeah.
we'll obviously stay in touch, but those relationships are what matter now. And we worked really hard when we made the announcement that we were going to have to shut the team down at the end of the year for multiple reasons. But the biggest thing that we sat down as a group before we did that was try to come up with a creative package to take care of our employees. Part of the announcement going as early as it did was to give these guys time to work through the rest of the year, but at the same time, try to secure jobs for the next season. So when you sit there and get on social media and you read these idiots that don't know what they're talking about, they just don't like me. So there's anything that they can latch onto to talk crap about us, that's what they do. And that's fine. It's the people that don't have a life and don't know what they're talking about, so they really don't matter. But we worked really, really hard to make sure that we took care of our people, because we have those relationships with those people. They're people we care about. We know them. We know their spouses. Some of them, we know their children really well. And so that was a really important factor for us, knowing that we were going to have to shut it down, but how do we take care of our people in the meantime and make sure we do the best for them? So leaving the shop was hard, and I guarantee when the race is over and those rigs are loaded finally, I mean, I'm not leaving till those guys are all ready to leave the racetrack, till the last SHR employee is left.
Incredible. You've had an amazing cast of drivers through the years. It all started with Ryan Newman, and then through the years, Danica Patrick, Kurt Busch, a who's list. Kevin Harvick, obviously. Did you learn more as a owner than you had to learn as a driver, or was it just a completely different experience?
I think it was a completely different experience, but I think there were a lot of variables that I never even anticipated. And it really started early out of the box. Gene had a unique situation when I joined Gene's program. And the first day that I physically met Gene was the day before the All-Star race in 2009. And I remember talking to him and laughing about, he goes, well, my goal is to finish on the lead lap this year. And it was so hard to not burst out laughing, because I'm like, if we don't finish on the lead lap, I'm going to be on suicide watch, is what came through my head initially. But the best part about that was literally 24 hours later was the race, the All-Star race at Charlotte. And we win the race. We're holding $1 million check together in victory lane. But the thing that I never considered, never thought of, and mainly I didn't think about it, what I'm getting ready to talk about, because here I had made a change from a top organization to join a group that had 2 cars, 34th and 36th in points. And we had to turn this program around, and everybody says, you're stupid for leaving. You're never going to be successful trying to do this over here. And here we are going from February, and in May, we win our first race together and win the biggest paying race of the year, $1 million race. And So the satisfaction for me as an owner and as a driver, and with all these people saying you're not going to be successful, you're making a big mistake leaving, to sit there and have that pride of I did what I set out to do and way quicker than I thought it was going to happen. But it was totally overshadowed by crew members that had been with the organization before we came in that had never, and they'd been with other race teams too, but they had never won a race ever in the Cup
Wow.
Series.
Wow.
And to see these guys in victory lane with tears coming out of their eyes, I was totally caught off guard. And it really reshaped my thinking about what an owner and what ownership was going to be like. It was like, it's not about me and the pride of what I can do, it's what we all can do. And it's what it means to all of us, not just the naysayers and what they're saying about me. To see these guys, that meant way more than anything anybody could have ever said going into that event. So to see those guys win their first race, that was a game changer for me as an owner, and really what ownership meant to me.
You told Kevin Harvick recently that the decision is kind of the decision to pull the plug on SHR is kind of the same feeling that you got when you found out that he was retiring, right? End of an era, and probably more bitter than sweet, you said. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, like I said, I mean, and that feeling really hit at Charlotte when I went to the shop at SHR the last day. When you're in the middle of racers are unique individuals. We don't think long term. We're very short minded. If you win the race on Sunday at 5 o'clock, by 5 o'clock on Monday, you've already stopped celebrating in your head. And at 5 o'clock on Monday, everything that's in your head is thinking about how do I do that again this coming weekend?
Yeah.
That's the way racers think. So when you stand in a shop that you've been at for 16 years and you think of all the things and all the changes and all the hurdles that you've crossed and all the challenges and all the things that you did to take care of employees and take care of yourself and take care of our partners and everybody involved, you think about all the work that went into it, and you think about that it's coming to an end. That's an emotional deal. I mean, 16 years of my life. I mean, literally a quarter of my life has been spent at SHR, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, I love the experience. I love the people. There's a couple in the building that I'm not going to miss, but I think everybody has a group like that. But it's, I think it's always hard when you pour your heart and soul into something, and you build it into something special with a unique group of people, and then you realize that chapter of your life has to end for multiple reasons. And the one thing that I think frustrates me more than anything is to listen to the idiots say that I'm getting out of drag racing because I like drag racing more and I have to spend my money on drag racing. I don't have to spend my money on anything but my family. I don't have to go drag racing. Leah does not care if we have a drag team or not. She literally was getting ready to retire at the end of the year, and it was because of the situation she was in. But I said, hey, if I could put something together, would you want to keep driving? She goes, absolutely. I said, I would like to see you keep driving. So I know her passion. So, but it's not, the reasons we started had nothing to do with drag racing. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing as a race car driver and as an owner now. This was a separate entity, no different than Eldora Speedway is a separate entity for us. Our World of Outlaw team's a separate entity. Our three-quarter midget teams in Indiana that we have, all these are separate. They all operate independently. No decisions on anything that we do are made for any of those other sides other than their own silos. So it's it's just hard when you put your time into 16 years though, and you sit there and realize that it just has to change. It's just, and I mean, I think, and I've talked before. I mean, we've made changes in our careers before, and you have to sit there and be smart about it. You have to think about it from the business side and take the emotion out of the equation. Then you have to factor in the emotional side, and sometimes they align, sometimes they don't. And but at the end of the day, our world's constantly evolving. It's stupid to think that we as people and professionals in business don't evolve with it. And with
Yeah.
that come changes that people don't understand. But we're also in a society now where everybody thinks they have the answers. I told Leah I've been reading a lot on social media, and I was reading some stuff that came out the other day, and I was laughing in bed reading it. And she's like, what are you laughing about? I said, Well, the funny thing is 90% of the replies in here from these people, they have an element of the story that's correct. Their reply, an element of their answer is correct in the big picture of the story. But there wasn't one reply by anybody that had all of it right and had the whole
Right.
picture. They have elements and pieces of it, but they don't know. So that's the sad part about social media is everybody thinks they know, but they only know what they know. And they make their decision 100% off of what they know. And that's the way we're supposed to do it. But there's always more to the story than what they know.
Yeah, Kyle Busch came on this program and talked about how long he wants to race, and the world blew up after he said what he said, and 90% of what was said was incorrect afterwards.
Yeah.
Social
It
media.
always is. It
It
always
always
is.
is.
It's
I know. Yeah.
from the media side, and everybody thinks that I hate the media. I still have great friendships in the media with the majority of the people I've worked with in my life. Yeah, it's no different than when you were in school. You had all your friends, but there were a handful of bad eggs that you didn't like. Yeah, it's the same for us. I mean, it's the same for the media too. They have their drivers they like, and there's a handful of people they don't like. But I have great friendships with all of them, and it's been fun to go through all of this and read what they're putting. I found out a article in Speedway Illustrated came out today thanking us for 24 years of memories. And it's just all the different covers of Speedway Illustrated that we've been on. And I can't wait to get it. It was the first thing I saw when I woke up this morning was a friend of mine that sent me the cover. And it just makes you think back to all the times and the people that you've met along the way and what it truly means. But yeah, we can tell a story. You and I can talk for the entire day, and somebody is not going to get all the details right, but think they got it all figured out. And at some point, you just sit there and go, "Why am I fighting this fight to try to tell everybody?" It's like they're not going to get it. Everybody's not going to get it, but you gotta respect their opinions and their views. And that's the great thing. That is the great thing that still today, as we're talking, we still have the ability to say what we feel
That's
about
right.
things and don't get penalized for it right now.
Yeah. Things have changed, to your point, a lot since the days of maybe me, down there watching you go around the Brickyard 400. You told Kevin that NASCAR's changed a lot, drastically different. How is it different? What's different about it?
Leadership more than anything. I mean, I had the privilege of coming in when Bill France Jr. was there, and Bill was a very unique character and a very, very great leader for our sport. But I think a support system that he had, I think his number one support system was Mike Helton. And that is the one person beyond a shadow of a doubt that's still left that I have the utmost respect for is Mike. Mike helped me grow as a person. Mike is one of three people that I credit being the three greatest people that have ever come into my life and helped shape me as who I am as a person today and as a man today. So I have the utmost respect for Mike, but there's people like Bill France that we lost. We lost Jim Hunter, and Jim was somebody in the media that absolutely had a great way of explaining to drivers, just like Mike Helton did, of why things are done the way they are and how it all fits in the big picture. There isn't anybody there now that remotely comes close. You talk to people that are there now and you talk to officials that are there, and these are high officials in the company. And when you talk to them, it's like they're just trying to keep their job. They're worried if they make the wrong decision that they're going to get in trouble for it and lose their job. That's the feeling you get when you talk to them. The leadership is way different than it was. The direction it's going, and I say this from a standpoint. I've been an owner in the sport. I've been a driver in the sport, but I'm still a fan of the sport too. 98% of the race fans have no clue. They don't know the stuff that I'm talking about off the side that are the elements that I don't like. They see what they see during the race on Sunday on the broadcast, and that's fine. That's totally fine. At the end of the day, if you enjoy what you see, that's a good thing. But for someone like myself that's been in the trenches, been in the sport for over 20 years, what it was when I started and where it's at now and the direction it's going, I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't necessarily like it. There's elements of it that I'm very disappointed in, but that's okay. Not everybody has to agree on it. But for me, that's why it's the right time to make a change. That's not why we're making the change, but it's okay with me that it's happening now because of things that have happened as the years progress, the charter agreements, are a joke. Um, and if people aren't smart enough to read between the lines of when someone like Rick Hendrick says, I just got tired of arguing with him, do you think Rick Hendrick runs his business and in negotiations just says, oh, I'm just going to sign this agreement because I'm tired of arguing with you? Rick Hendrick's never done that a day in his life. So if people aren't smart enough to read between the lines and figure out what that means,
Yeah.
then you're all missing the whole big picture all by itself. So it's just an area that I don't want to be a part of anymore. I'm a purist. I'm an old school guy when it comes to racing. Um, I love reading the fans' perspective on all this stuff that's going on with 2311 and front row and a lawsuit and this and that. I really have enjoyed reading the fans' perspective because, like I said, there's a bunch of these fans that they're on top of this. They don't have all the details right, but different ones have different pieces of it right. And if you can get them all to listen to each other long enough, they might be able to put all those pieces together and really get the true story. But it's it's just time. I mean, I hate it. I'm going to be emotional at Phoenix. I know. Probably won't show it because I don't like showing emotion on that side a lot. But at the same time, it's I think with the fact that literally a week and a half later, I'm supposed to welcome my first child into the world. I think this is like a big book where a massive chapter of my life is coming to an end. And whether I like it or not, or whether I'm happy about it or not, it's irrelevant, but it's a chapter that's ending and a massive new chapter of my life is getting ready to start at the same time. And, it's going to be a welcome change.
A completely different chapter. And you've had a share of all kinds of different chapters. And I referenced it at the beginning, but you are an all around racer and likely the only IndyCar, NASCAR, sprint car, drag racer that's out there. I mean, you'll race anything. You always have. That's what I always enjoyed about you. You'd show up on Sunday after racing on Saturday somewhere on a dirt track, and it was just normal. What's your favorite to drive? What's been the favorite to drive? And you
Probably
can't,
one of my favorite questions that I get asked a lot.
but you can't say it's like your kids because you don't have those yet. But that's
No, 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 no.
coming.
I think during my career and in the stages and the periods that I drove each of these cars, if I just base it off of that, when I ran USAC midgets on dirt, that was by far the most fun I had driving a race car.
I bet.
And mainly because it's a lightweight car, it has a lot of horsepower for the weight. And the great thing from a driver's standpoint is I had the ability as a driver to really manipulate the car. If it wasn't exactly right, I could manipulate it and not necessarily fix it, but I could mask the problem if it wasn't 100% right. But man, the nights that it was 100% right, you want to talk about something that, when you wear that old pair of shoes that you haven't seen for a year and you put them on and it's like, wow, that's that feel I was looking for. When you get that with the race car, there's no better feeling than that. And I think driving a USAC midget was what I really enjoyed the best. Every one of the cars I've ever driven, every different division, every different class, whether it's pavement, dirt, you name it, loved racing. I still love getting in new cars. That's why I got into drag racing. And, one of the reasons, obviously my wife's the reason I got into it, but
Right.
I went from wanting to be a spectator to seeing what it felt like. So started testing with her car, realized, hey, this is way out of my league. I don't need to be doing this. And went back and ran a top alcohol dragster. Found out I really liked it. I enjoyed it. And then, my wife wants to start a family. Hey, would you want to drive the top fuel car? Not really, but if you think we can, it'll be all right. Right. So here we are. And I've been driving a top fuel car running 334 mile an hour this year.
I'm gonna ask you about that. I'm gonna ask you about that. But is there anything that you didn't get a chance to drive that you would have liked to have driven?
I kind of joked around. I mean, most people don't even know I drove a monster truck one night at Talladega. They had four of us. They had four of us run there. I actually broke my back that night, and that was 6 races from the end of the season. And I finished the season that year with a broken back and didn't know it till I finally went back to Indy around holidays and went and saw Dr. Trammell. I said, "Hey, my back is killing me," and I said, "I'm eating aspirin like they're coming out of a Pez dispenser." So, and he goes, "Yeah, you broke your back." He goes, "The good news, it's healing really well." I'm like, "What? That's great, I guess." but I don't know. I always wanted. I grew up, in around Indianapolis, and one of the tracks there that's really historic that has a cool event is the Indianapolis Speedrome. It's a little 5th mile track, and that was where I first raced USAC midgets. I ran with Kenny Irwin there. We both ran for Rookie of the Year there way back in '91, I believe. And but they have a 3-hour figure eight endurance race that is absolutely insane and awesome to watch. And I always wanted to try that. Have never had the opportunity to do that. I love the V8 supercars in Australia. I mean, motorsports in Australia is strong. They've got a lot of cool racetracks and teams and drivers there. Um,
You were open wheel. Did you ever think, gosh, what would a Formula One car feel like?
I drove a Formula One car. I
Oh, you
actually
did?
had the chance with Lewis Hamilton because of Mobile One to do a seat swap similar to what Jeff Gordon did at Indy.
Yeah.
Lewis and I swapped cars at Watkins Glen. So, and I only got to run 4 laps, but it was a really cool 4 laps.
How was that? How did it feel?
The most impressive thing to me that I didn't count on was how good of brakes they have.
Braking. Yeah.
And it's like I always sat there and we'd watch the race on Sunday, and you watch the start of a Grand Prix race, and they go in the corner and they wipe two or three of them out, and you're like, how does this happen? Or when they try to pass each other, they wipe each other out. It's like, how does this happen? These guys are supposed to be the best in the world. I can tell you exactly why it happens, because the braking zone for those cars, because of how good the brakes are, is so short, and how long the cars are, they're so long that the distance that you have to gain in that short amount of time, percentage wise, is massive. And, these drivers are so good at maximizing the braking. They're not sitting there going in there going, I'm going to brake 20% earlier and just cruise in there and give this guy the opportunity. They're going to the threshold every time they're in a braking zone. So, that was the one thing that probably caught me off guard the most when I drove the Formula One car. I mean, I literally at Watkins Glen went into turn one, got on the brakes, and got slowed down so much, and had the downshifts done to where I literally had to then get off the brake, get on the throttle, drive it down to the corner, turn the corner, and get back in the gas.
Mm.
So the braking was the most impressive part. But I had ran on the simulator and had made quite a few laps, and I was used to the handling of a Indy car, which isn't the same as a Formula One car, obviously. So I was used to the G forces and used to the corner speed. But to do it on a road course, that was an experience I'd never had before.
All right, G forces, and we've had Alexis DeJoria on this program, and she's talked about the G forces in a dragster. What'd you think when you strapped in and let her go first time?
Well, I went down. I feel like I did it the right way. I went down to Bradenton, Florida, to Frank Holly's driving school. So I drove a super comp car, 6 runs. And then I think I made 3 runs in his top alcohol dragster in the afternoon, and then came back the next day and I think made 4 more runs in the top alcohol car. Went back again 3 months later, 5 runs in the alcohol car the first day, 5 the second day, and then my now wife Leah and her husband, or her car owner Don Schumacher, said, "Hey, let's take you to Vegas and do a test." And in my eyes, I'm like, this is the guy that owns the car. It's his money. It's his race car that if I screw it up, it costs him money. This is my, at the time, girlfriend, and I think she likes me enough to not want me to be hurt. She's saying this is all right, so this is probably going to be all right. But I would say when I hit the gas the first time, they told me to go to the 330 cone, which is the second time increment that we see on the slip. And I thought I went to the 330 cone and I lifted at 220 feet. And I'm like, I thought I went all the way, but by then you're running almost probably 180 miles an hour in 330 feet.
Wow.
So it's crazy. Literally, the 60-foot cone is the first increment, and in 60 feet, you're running 100 miles an hour. In 60 feet, I can run to the refrigerator. I mean, I can run 60 feet. 60 feet in a race car, you're running 100 miles an hour already. I mean, that is insane. But I think the first thing that I noticed is wherever that car was out on the racetrack, my mind was a couple hundred feet behind that. And that's kind of a scary deal when you're driving a car 300 plus miles an hour at the end of the run, for your mind to be that far behind it. If anything odd happens or out of the normal happens, you're not going to be prepared for it. So it didn't catch me on the first run. It took about 10 runs of testing with her before I realized this is literally the dumbest thing I've ever done in motorsports is get in a top dragster with no experience. So anybody that thinks they could just jump in a top fuel car, you have a death wish is what you have without at least training for it. But it's super cool. I mean, there's nothing on the planet that you can drive that accelerates like a top fuel dragster does. You see Top Gun and you see them launch fighter jets off of aircraft carriers. Our cars accelerate harder than that. So it is literally insane what these cars are able to do and how fast they are. But I think one of the things that it wasn't so much the acceleration that caught me as much as when the parachutes come out at the top end. And one of my racing buddies said, "What's that feel like?" I said, "Relief." I said, because you realize you got a lot better shot at not dying anymore because the car's at least going to slow down. It still might hurt if something goes wrong, but you're not running 300 miles an hour anymore. I mean, it takes a lot of speedway really quick.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I mean, you've never shied away from anything, Tony. So I'm not surprised.
Well, I'm too lazy to work a real job. So, I mean, I'm more scared of having to drive an hour in rush hour traffic and sit in an office building all day and then drive a hour in rush hour traffic home each day. So I'll try anything at some point.
Does Leah give you tips when you're done and kind of, I would do that a little differently. I do this a little differently.
Yeah, she's actually getting ready. I just heard her come in the garage. So the dog's going to bark. She's going to come in and be surprised. She's been my driver coach the whole time. And honestly, even with the top alcohol dragster, there were very few runs that she didn't physically come to the starting line and watch. The whole year, this year, driving her top fuel dragster, she is the best coach you could possibly ask for. I told her when I started this year, I said, "Listen, I don't want to do this 98% right." I said, "If I do anything in a race car, I want to do it 100% or I don't want to do it at all. So if you see something that I'm missing or I do wrong, you have to tell me. You can't be afraid to tell me." And she absolutely nitpicks every detail, and I love her for that. She just shows you how to do it better or do it the right way. And we were going into the U.S. Nationals. We were tied for fifth in reaction time with Tony Schumacher. So that's an 8-time world champion and great company to be in.
Not bad. Let's talk a little bit about Racers Roundtable. Danny's been on this program. He was on a long time ago, a few years ago, and he's doing so well. And this concept is truly awesome. It's labeled as the greatest gathering in racing history, which just the season premiere was on October 16th. These names are amazing, but what a cool concept. Just getting folks together, kind of like you and I. And we're just talking about the greatest moments, the favorite places. What have you enjoyed about it the most? And maybe what surprised you?
Well, I'll start with Danny. I'd met Danny in, I guess it would have been 2017. I went to Monaco, and that was the first time that I met Danny Sullivan, and he was up in the control booth. I got to go up there. Gene took me up there to meet him. And so that was the first time I'd met Danny, and I really enjoyed. I had 5 minutes with him and really enjoyed that. And
Awesome.
then when we talked about doing this show together, and while we shot these episodes, I think what I really appreciated the most is here's Danny in his 70s. He looks like he's in his 40s. He's healthy like he's in his 40s. He could get in a race car anywhere, anytime, and be competitive right now. But the thing that probably has impressed me the most about Danny is the fact that his detail and the stories he remembers. Every time the night before we started shooting, and we had a 14-hour production day the next day, go to dinner with each other and listening to him tell stories, it's like you catch yourself being a fan, sitting there as a fan. And I couldn't stop smiling because you never get to hear stuff like that. And that's honestly what the roundtable show's about. It was getting these guys together, there's a central topic that brings each group to each episode. And, one of the episodes was the Penske drivers, which Danny was a part of. So to hear different drivers that have driven for Penske, whether it's been on the NASCAR side or the IndyCar side or the sports car side, to hear these guys all together and tell their stories about Roger and his organization, unbelievable. I mean, you'd beg to be at a bar some night and see these guys sitting at a table at the bar and just telling these stories, but it never happens. And I think one of the things that was really cool about it was we literally we shot for 3 days, but we did the bulk of the shows in 2 days. And to get all of these famous, accomplished race car drivers to get their schedules to where we could shoot all this in 2 days like that.
That's
And
crazy.
you're,
Yeah.
you're in between episodes, and like literally we would try to finish one and try to get started 10 minutes later with the next episode. So while we're shooting the show, the next group is in the green room and they're actually watching us shoot an episode. So I think that was a concept that we did that really made it go extremely well, from the standpoint that instead of not knowing what you're going into for these guys, they got to watch the show ahead of them and realize that it's just conversational, that it's relaxed. And after the first show, everything just clicked. But we brought a tough group of women in for the first episode, knowing that they were going to be able to handle this. So they set the benchmark for everybody else, which was awesome. But to have Sarah Fisher and Lynn St. James, and we just had such an incredible group that came here. I mean, Mario Andretti, AJ Foyt, Chip Ganassi. You think of all these legends, Don Perdome, Shirley Muldowney, Don Garlitz. I mean, you had the who's who of motorsports. And obviously, there were a lot of people that couldn't make it work in their schedule that we're going to try to get, hopefully, for season 2. But we're going to keep expanding it. I think there's different categories of motorsports that I want to try to introduce next year. And I'm sure Danny has a lot of awesome ideas. So it was so much fun for us to be able to bring these people in. We literally called audibles the entire time. I mean, originally when we set this concept up, a third of the shows Danny was going to do, a third of them I was going to do, and a third of them we were both going to host together on. And I think I sat in on all but 2 of the episodes for the entire season. So we just kind of, Danny would sit there and say, "Hey, I think you need to be a part of this one for this reason." And so I'd sit in on that show. And I think there were a couple that I said, "I know you don't think you need to be a part of this one, but this is why I think you need to be in this one." And so it was just fun to sit there working with Danny, working with Pam Miller, who is behind the scenes that people should know about that don't know about. Huge person on Fox with the NASCAR side. And Bill Armour did a great job getting all these people and the concept all together. But the group we had was a fun group. All the people we had on the show was amazing, and the stories. I mean, my God, we should have had cameras throughout the entire house. We shot all of it at Forrest Lucas's mansion on the north side of Indianapolis, and I wish we could have had cameras in the hallways and in the makeup room and in the green room waiting. I mean, it was hard. The makeup artists, these poor ladies, I mean, it was like they were on overtime with us, because I would get so tickled listening to people tell stories with each other. I'd get crying, I'd get laughing so hard. And then they got to come in and touch you up before we go in. But it just showed exactly what Danny's mindset was going into this. It absolutely happened 100% the way he envisioned it. And it was a huge honor to be a part of it with him.
Wow. Congratulations. It's a great, great series. And like I said, it just debuted October 16th. A couple final questions for you. As you reflect, there's a little bit of rapid fire here. Favorite opponents that you raced against?
I think my all-time favorite still is Kenny Irwin Jr. Like I said, Kenny and I started racing midgets against each other at the Speedrome in 1991, and both worked our way into all 3 national USAC series together. Both went to NASCAR almost at the same time, within a year or 2 of each other. But the one thing that I can tell you about Kenny is Kenny made me a better race car driver. There were times we were bitter enemies, and there were times at the track that we were friends and hung out after the races together. But the thing with Kenny and I is I feel like we both pushed each other to be better. We both knew when we saw that he, if he saw me at the racetrack, and most definitely when I saw him at the racetrack, I knew that it was not going to be an easy night. That if you were going to win the race, you were going to have to bust your ass, work hard, and you were going to have to be 100% on your game, not 95%, but 100% on your game that night if you were going to win. And you had to go through him if you were going to win the race. So I would say hands down, he was the competitor that I respected the most. And ultimately, even on the days that we didn't get along, and we had problems on the racetrack together, he's the guy that I enjoyed racing with the most. I just really liked racing against him. I liked him. I think the world of Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy is probably one of the most fair racers that you will ever meet. And for a racer to be fair and still be as accomplished as he is, I think speaks volumes for who he is as a person and a race car driver. Trying to think. We've raced with so many people.
Oh, I know you have.
Jack Hewitt on the USAC side. I mean, there wasn't a bigger character than Jack Hewitt. We lost the late Scott Bloomquist on the late model side here recently. And Scott, I had a chance to do some things away from the racetrack with Scott and got to know him a little bit. And he was way ahead of his time. He definitely changed the game of dirt late model racing. But every form of motorsports you're a part of, there's one or two people that really stand out, I feel like, and they're the ones that make the biggest impact on you.
Favorite track?
I'm technically supposed to say Eldora Speedway because
besides Eldora.
But Eldora, as a driver, Eldora still scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I bet it does.
I was good in non-wing cars there. I was okay in a wing car. I was not very good in a 410 wing car there. I went really well in a dirt late model there as well. The Chili Bowl to me is one of the most iconic tracks. I mean, and mainly because the people that go there, it's not that the track itself is extremely special other than it's inside of a building. It's a dirt track inside, which had never been done before. Other than Houston, somebody will correct me on this. It was done. They did a midget race in the Houston Astrodome way back in the day. Ohsweken Speedway is a dirt track in Canada that I'm extremely fond of. The promoter there is a good friend of mine that's exceptional. I loved Richmond on the NASCAR side. I love Sonoma. IndyCar racing, I love the old Phoenix. Before they reconfigured Phoenix, I loved racing IndyCar at Phoenix.
I thought you were going to say the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Indy's a love-hate. It's, when things went well at Indy, it was magical. If your car was off at Indy and you couldn't manipulate it and fix it, it's the longest race of your life.
Yeah.
And most frustrating because you just are a sitting duck all day if your car's not right and there's nothing you can do to fix it. Indy for me was kind of a love-hate because I probably put more pressure on myself every time we raced at Indy than any other racetrack in the world that I've ever been to and raced at. I mean, I was more nervous the week of that event than I would be going into any other event.
Wow. Final thing, most satisfying moment when you reflect back on your time and, when the final truck has left the infield, what's the most satisfying moment that pops into your mind, Tony, as a driver, as an owner?
I think there's a ton of moments that should be in consideration for this and that are in my mind. The one that just stands a little bit above the rest of them for obvious reasons is that championship run at Homestead in 2011. To win the first championship for SHR and to be the last owner driver to win a championship since Alan Quickie, and in the dramatic fashion that it happened. I mean, if people go back and they watch that entire race and all the drama that happened during that, there was enough drama that we had personally to cover 5 races, let alone one race that was for the championship. So I'd still say that for the company as an owner, for the team, and for myself as a driver, that championship run in the chase, those 10 weeks and winning 5 of those 10 races, but specifically Homestead was by far the moment that I feel like stands out above all the rest.
Just short of another big moment that's coming in a few weeks, and he has the daddy app to make sure that he's ready, because he is ready for that baby boy who is coming. And Tony, thank you so much for sharing everything here on Cars and Culture today. Thanks for being a great guest and congratulations on all of it.
I appreciate it. It's always fun to talk to you. Every time we meet, you're doing a different role, which is great. But every time you have a different role, it's going up the ladder. So I'm proud of what you've done in your career, and proud to spend the time with you today. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.